Thank you. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the 2025 Fellowship Conference. It's fantastic to have so many of our fellows here today, and also those joining online. We hope that today is going to be a day of discovery, of networking, and connecting you all more closely to ZSL, though I know many of you have very long histories with ZSL, far greater than mine. My name is Pippa Carte. I joined in March as Director of Development, so I'm in my very early days here, but I'm absolutely privileged, feel very privileged to have joined an organisation so passionate about protecting wildlife. And what a wonderful opportunity for me to meet many of you today and to hear about your work and involvement with ZSL. I have the pleasure today of guiding you through the proceedings and introducing all of our distinguished speakers. Today is all about you as our fellows, and you may have been at last year's event where we asked you for some feedback, and you'll be glad to see that we've listened. So we have a number of posters in the room next door, as per your suggestion, and also some biscuits, which I think were on order. There are a lot, so please do keep your energy up and fuel throughout the day. Some very brief housekeeping points, if I may, before I hand over to Professor Sir Jim Smith to open this morning's event. If there is a fire alarm, it is genuine, it is not a drill, so please do follow our team and head out to the front of the building opposite the entrance to Regent's Park. Please help yourself to tea and coffee and biscuits throughout the day in the foyer. You may well have found the toilets both downstairs for disabled and upstairs otherwise. And during the day and this morning, you will have the opportunity to engage with all of our speakers and continue to ask questions out with the Q&A. But during the Q&A, obviously for those in the room, we have roving mics and we will be coming around to take your questions. For those of us joining us on Zoom, please do use the Mentimeter app. And you can find that either by scanning the QR in your programme, if within the room you'd like to ask via that means, or on the website. Without further ado, may I hand over to ZSL's President, Professor Sir Jim Smith, to open the event.
Thank you, Pippa, and also let me say, Pippa, welcome to ZSL. We're delighted to have you with us. And I think it's true to say you've had some successes, some successes already. So we're absolutely delighted about it. Thank you. And welcome everybody else to what is, I think, the third of our fellows meetings. I think they've been getting better and better. As Pippa said, we have been listening to people's comments, and we hope that this one will be the best yet. But any thoughts you have on the way we operate, on the way the meeting runs, let us know, and we'll make sure that we can do something about it next year. So thank you, everybody, for being here today. And thank you for those who are also joining us online. Welcome online, and I hope you enjoy the day as well. I think one of the important things I just want to mention is that this year we launched our new ZSL strategy, Restoring Nature, a Blueprint for Wildlife Recovery. This strategy focuses on achieving our vision of a world where wildlife thrives, and our purpose is to inspire, inform, and empower people to protect and restore wildlife. Our research tells us that over the last 50 years, animal populations have shrunk by an average of 73%. Where a forest, coral reef, or waterway might once have been home to a population of 10 tigers, reef sharks, or salamanders, there are, on average, just 2 or 3 today. If the world continues on this trajectory, it will lead to population collapse, with too few animals to breed and sustain their populations. But it will also result in wider ecological failure. In setting out ZSL's Blueprint for Recovery, we've committed ourselves to help prevent further decline and undo the damage humanity has caused. Our strategy focuses on 4 areas where we will have the most impact. And each area is one in which we've proven success, protecting species, restoring habitats, training conservationists, and creating change. And together with our partners, our teams of expert conservationists and scientists, and with you in the community, we want to build a world where wildlife thrives. Our science, delivered through our world-leading Institute of Zoology, is vital to our strategy and impact, and will ensure that our conservation is evidence-based. As fellows, you are a vital part of helping us achieve our mission. Thank you all for the passion and dedication you show to protecting wildlife around the world and for your commitment to ZSL. We hope today helps bring parts of our strategy to life for you, as well as giving you the opportunity to meet and hear from our other fellows. So that's why you're here.
It's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker now. As a research fellow at ZSL's Institute of Zoology, Dr. Javier Sanchez Romano investigates how wildlife, people, and ecosystems all share health risks. His talk's going to explore the One Health concept, revealing how environmental degradation and disease emergence are linked together, and why this really matters for conservation. We're delighted you could join us today. Over to you, Javier.
Okay. Thank you so much, Pippa, and thank you all for being here today. As she said, I'm Javier. I'm a research fellow in One Health. I started very recently as well in February. I used to live in Norway, so there has been a lot of changes, but animal health and One Health has been kind of the continuous point in my career for quite a few years now. So I will talk a little bit about animal health. I will talk about this for kind of the whole day. I only have 30 minutes. There is a lot of things to cover, so this will be a very general talk and not touching into many details. I have to say, there are some unpleasant pictures in the presentation, not very bad, but when we talk about animal disease and things like that, there will be some pictures that are not nice. I didn't think that there were any, but when I went through the presentation yesterday, I thought like, okay, maybe I have to do a disclaimer before starting. So my first question to you, I will ask a few things during the presentation. How many of you are familiar with One Health and what One Health is? So more people than I expected, so that's good. So I will cover it very briefly what it is, because it kind of is in my work title, and it will be kind of something that I will mention during the presentation. But a very brief overview of what I'm doing here. I'm a veterinarian by background many years ago, not a veterinarian anymore because I'm not really a practitioner, but I have that background. And I'm working in two projects, basically here at the Institute of Zoology, looking at zoonotic pathogens and conservation and biodiversity. The first one is in Central Asia. These are kind of some of the cool species you can find there, but there are many other more common species that sometimes are a bit forgotten. What we are trying to look at is how protected areas can help to prevent the emergence of zoonotic pathogens that are pathogens that go from animals to humans. The PLF, Congo Basin, Luis covered it perfectly, so I don't have to say anything about it. Just that the work I will be doing is mostly focused in the health kind of component, but we have One Health kind of connecting all the different components that Luis explained before. And what is One Health? So One Health is integrating human, animal, and ecosystem health, because we cannot really separate these three things. They are kind of connected. So I will start with the presentation, and my first question again, or second question now, is what is health? What do you think health is? Anyone that want to shout? What is health for you? So physical health, in a way, physical health, but there are many other things that we can think about: mental and emotional health, environmental health, social and community health, digital health, something that kind of we are kind of improving and changing over time, and probably many others that I couldn't think about, but probably there are more. What about animal health? Is it the same? Or is just animals getting sick and dying? No, it's basically the same. I kind of remove digital and technological health. Maybe in the future it will be important as well, but I don't know. Physical health is of course important, but when we talk about wildlife, sometimes we kind of really don't consider physical health as the top priority because we don't think about individuals that much. But of course, are individual animals sick? If it's a pet, if it's an important species, we kind of think more about it. Mental and emotional health, animal welfare. Are the animals being able to do what they are meant to do in nature? Environmental health. This is kind of a connection as well. I mentioned it in the human parts. It's here for animals as well. Social and community health, and of course, population health. This is very important for conservation, and we have to kind of always consider if they are doing well as a group. Are there parasites? Yes, but do we care? Maybe not, because they are healthy in the broad picture. So a lot of text in there, but I want you to focus in the key words. One Health is an integrated, unifying approach. So it's kind of a lot of people working together for a common goal that is that everyone and everything will be healthy. So we work across multiple sectors, multiple disciplines, involving the communities. So it's kind of like a holistic approach to health. So for me, it's not a buzzword, but kind of for many people maybe has been like that. This is an approach that has existed for many years, but it's getting more and more importance over time. We all know that the situation in Earth is probably not the best. Over the last few years, we have an increase in a lot of bad things. The amount of pollution, the amount of people in the planet, kind of if you look at here, it's in the last few years. The consumption of gas, oil, and other things, plastics, and of course, climate change and temperature increase. So it's a lot of things in the environment that are not right, and that affects wildlife health and human health in the same way. So again, we need to think about having a healthy animal population, a healthy ecosystem, to be able to think that we are healthy. If we go kind of jump more into the animal thing, this is a classic example of a zoonotic pathogen spreading to humans. So fruit bats are kind of flying around, they are happy in the forest, and then something happened. What do you think is the biggest threat to biodiversity? Humans. I heard habitat was somewhere. So changes in the habitat of the animals is the biggest threat. And many times that's driven by humans, as many of you kind of mentioned in here. So changes in the forest for especially livestock and agriculture. And when this is not done in the right way, not as Luis has been mentioning before, of course, people need food. And of course, people need to have sustainable kind of agriculture and things like that. But when this is not in the right, is not done in the right way, then the happy fruit bats move from the forest into the farms or the houses, and then there is a transmission of a pathogen that was there before, and it was not really doing anything either to the bats or to people, but somehow kind of conditions change, and the kind of pathogen is transmitted either to pigs or to humans directly, or to horses and then humans. And so it is a change in the ecosystem that makes a pathogen emerge and go from animals to humans. So this was a big overview of things. And now I will go a little bit more into different aspects of animal health that I think are important. As I said before, there are many others, but I don't have time to cover everything, and we will go through a few of them. the first I thought was animal welfare and One Health. So it's not only physical health, it's many other things in here. This picture is from the internet. The source is in there, but one of the big things associated to problems with animal welfare and maybe psychological health in wildlife is a loss of habitat. You have some kind of timber company coming in, cutting things, and then orangutans or other species lose the habitat that they are used to living. They don't know what to do. They are kind of there hanging around. What do I do? Where do I find food? How do I interact with the other species in here or with the other individuals in my group? This is another example. I used to work in Norway, and there has been a lot of conversations about land use. And reindeer is a wild species in there, but it's also a semi-domestic species by the indigenous people in Scandinavia, the Sami people. They have pasture rights in many areas of the country, but more and more what you see is pasture fragmentation and human development. So this was built in the breeding area for reindeer, and females don't go close to this. So you still see reindeer in the area, and they said, okay, it's fine. We have the generators, there are generators in there, but reindeer are still there. It's not a problem. But if you don't have females in the breeding area, maybe you have a population problem growing in there. So yeah, environmental changes as deforestation, logging, and other things are an issue. It leads to disrupting animal behaviors, chronic stress that can be also a problem for example, infectious diseases later on, increased aggression and abnormal behaviors between animals because they don't really know how to interact or how to behave anymore. And of course, closer contact between humans and domestic animals. So, and between wildlife and humans and domestic animals increases the chances of transmission of pathogens. Again, this can be done in the right way, and it can be done in a sustainable way. We cannot tell people they cannot develop things or they cannot have food or energy. We need to kind of find a way of doing it in a way that works for both human and wildlife. Another example of this, I think, is ecotourism. It's an important tool for wildlife conservation, but it's also a threat for wildlife conservation. One of the big issues is contact between tourists and wildlife that can lead to the transmission of infectious diseases, not to humans, but to the species that they are going to look at. So there was a big issue with common cold or COVID and gorillas and chimpanzees in Africa. It happens many other places in the world when people go swimming with the dolphins or with riding elephants. It can be an issue. It can lead also to poor welfare, stress, and natural behavior of the animals, especially in kind of, for example, the elephant tourism industry. And of course, if you don't do it in the right way, you can have habitat fragmentation, displacement, and increased exposure of wildlife to many things. So you can do ecotourism this way, or again, you can do it in the right way, as BLF is trying to do. You can do an ethically managed tourism involving biosecurity and welfare standards. You can have the community living in there, leading this sort of source of income. So they rely on this instead of, for example, wildlife poaching and meat trading. And you can do it in an ecologically sensitive way. So it can be done, and it can be done in the right way. I will try to always kind of put a bit of hope into all the problems I will be mentioning, but yeah, it can be a good thing. Next one, infectious diseases. This is kind of like the thing that most people would think when you think about animal health. I'm talking mostly about wildlife health, but why do I put these pictures in here? This is a mink farm, and these are cattle in the US. Can you think any disease that may be a problem in here, in the domestic animals, also humans, also wildlife? almost, this is influenza. So in the case of the mink, coronavirus was a big issue. It was a big kind of transmission in mink farms. In Denmark, they euthanized, I think, 17 million minks or something like that, because there were some kind of spread in the farms. This is very recent from the US, cases of avian influenza in cattle dying, some farmers getting sick as well. But what I wanted to point out here in a way is that sometimes we think about diseases coming from wildlife into domestic animals, but highly pathogenic avian influenza H5N1, the one that has been kind of making the headlines and all that, originated in a farm. So they got kind of influenza there. It was a duck farm, I think. The virus started to recombinate and change, and then kind of H5N1 highly pathogenic avian influenza started spreading from a farm into wildlife and kind of stayed in the system. I have some pictures that show kind of a not nice situation. This is Norway. These are colonies of kittiwakes, a type of seagull, in 1985. And this is how it looked in 2023. Can you see the difference? Even if the picture is not very good, you sort of see a difference in there. So in here, there were 250,000 approximately individuals. Here, I don't know the number, but probably very, very few. But it was not something that happened kind of at that time, 2006. We still can see a big difference between these two images. This is not only because of infectious diseases. Many things have changed. Climate change, of course, in the Arctic is one big issue. But in 2023, we have this. So this is an outbreak of avian influenza. Thousands of seagulls dying and kind of being picked up and removed from the ground. And this kind of was happening for weeks. So more and more seagulls dying and dying. So if you have a population that is threatened in a way already, and you suddenly get outbreak of infectious diseases, you can wipe out the whole population, and there is not really much that you can do it at the point where this happened. Do you know what this is? A finch. Do you know what this is? A finch as well. It's the same, but this one, of course, is sick. It has a trichomoniasis. So this is a protozoan parasite that it spread between many different birds. It's common in passerines, doves, pigeons, and I think also falcons and other kind of predators. It transmits very easily, and it's a problem here in our backyards, in the gardens in UK. This is transmitted in kind of feeders because it's transmitted with the saliva, feces, just direct contact between the birds. So it spread very easily. And at this point, I want to kind of give also a shout to the people working at IOSET in different projects. This is something that the Garden Wildlife Health people are working on. They are checking on how this is affecting the wild populations of birds and what things we can do to avoid the decline of these birds in nature. So there are some scientific studies of these people, but also very important, some work to give back to the community and let people know how you can avoid the transmission of diseases that are happening kind of close to us. It's not everything happening in Africa or Asia or kind of the Arctic. It's also happening here in London and everywhere else in the country. Another thing we have to consider talking about animal health is our work in reintroduction and translocation of species. I guess you all know these guys, the dormice, and you have probably heard about DRAS, the Disease Risk Analysis and Health Surveillance group in here. We cannot do a reintroduction or a translocation of animals without thinking about animal health. It may be that we take the dormice from a kind of breeding population and we just kind of put them back out in the forest if we do consider that they may have kind of genetic predispositions to something, or they can be carrying a pathogen that will be spreading in the kind of wild population, we are not doing our job in the right way. So this is kind of a very important work that people here at the IOZ or ZSL in general are doing. They don't work only with the dormice, they work with a lot of different species. So it's a very important part of the work people do here, I think, when we think about animal health. And the end goal of this is that no, didn't work. Yeah. It worked yesterday, but not today. Well, I can describe it as a beaver going out of the bag and kind of walking a bit like this until I goes out to the river. But before this happened, there is a lot of work because we have to make sure that these animals are healthy, and it will be a addition to the wild population. Not that we are kind of putting things out that will be a bad thing in the long term. Another group of people that do a very important job is a CSIP group. They are working with stranded mammals, and stranding per se may not be an issue. So if you find a dead whale or you find a dead dolphin, it's okay. That animals die in nature is not a problem. But the important thing is to know why they are dying and if that may be a problem for the population. Again, thinking about kind of population health and not individual sperm whale health. The team from CSIP went out, went to the animal, kind of did a field necropsy, and one of the no nice pictures is coming. So if you want to cover your eyes, is okay. They found this: a lot of plastic, a lot of garbage. This is a stomach. So again, it may be that this was an individual, and for some reason he decided to eat all the garbage in the sea. But when you find this consistently, then it's a problem. Another problem is marine contaminants, PCBs, and other components, polychlorinated biophenyls. There is a poster if you have seen it about this. But if you look at the graph in here, it's different species of marine mammals: harbor porpoise, striped dolphin, bottlenose dolphin, and killer whale. The more you kind of increase in the trophic chain, like you are higher up in the trophic chain, some of the components and concentration of these pollutants will increase in these animals because they are eating more and more things. And there is something called biomagnification or bioaccumulation, like they will kind of accumulate more and more of these pollutants. And again, maybe this is not an issue, like are they dying? No. In some cases, maybe yes, but there are other issues in there. Kind of they bioaccumulate, they can be immunosuppressive, so they will be more prone to have diseases. They can have problems with reproduction, and then you have an issue for the whole population in there. Another picture that maybe you will not like, but I put it in there. When we think about animal health, we also have to consider the people. And as Luis mentioned before with one of the questions, indigenous people have the right to hunt some species that we may think shouldn't be hunted, but it's like the way they have been doing it for many years. Sometimes it's the only access to food they have. So we have to kind of work with people when we do conservation. We cannot just say you cannot hunt seals or whales or maybe even pangolins in a way, but we have to do it in a sustainable way. So some kind of finishing with the infectious disease part. The more close we are to the environment and the more changes we do, the more options that we will have disease outbreaks. Climate change, pollution, and habitat loss or alteration change the ecosystem, and that have a lot of implications for both human health and wildlife health. And of course, we have to consider communities that rely on natural resources. So we go to Simsbury and buy a pack sandwich with chips, and some people cannot do that. They have to kind of eat blubber and other things. The next picture is also not nice, but this is how it looks. And if you think about the picture I showed before of going out in the trophic chain, humans are sort of in the top of the trophic chain. If you eat whale blubber or seal blubber, where all these pollutants are accumulated, that's going back to the people. And a lot of the problems that I have been talking about will kind of end up in the human population as well, kind of like fertility issues, even IQ. That there was a study about lead in some indigenous communities in Greenland and northern Canada, and they were seeing kind of the loss in IQ points connected to diet and kind of mercury and lead from the diet. Another issue for many indigenous people is that, for example, these are not heat treated. You eat this raw. This is from the stomach of a walrus. They kind of harvest a walrus, take the meat, but they also take the food that the walrus have eaten before. So clams and fish will be taken from the stomach, and they will eat them because you don't have many resources. You have to eat what you have. And in many cases, it's dry or salted or smoked. So any pathogen that is in here will kind of go through the heat treatment that we do in some of our when people like wildlife in here, like deer and things like that, you will kind of cook it, and then some pathogens will die. I showed some pictures of the Arctic, but this is happening everywhere in the world. Bushmeat markets in Asia, Africa, America, everywhere in the world. And the issue here is not only that wildlife is being poached, because it can be done in other ways, but there can be transmission of diseases between wild species in here, between wild animals and humans, and of course, welfare implications. If you have pangolins in the box for 3-4 days until someone bites, or a monkey, or anything, is kind of beyond the disease aspects. It's also about animal welfare and other things. So going back to the original slide that Luis and I showed before, what I want you to take out of this talk is that we have to work together. I know we all here are interested in conservation and animal health, but we have to work together with people that may not be that interested in it. We have to be able to give local communities a chance to survive and to have a way of living while we try to conserve the species that we want to work with in the areas. This is Celestial's vision. I guess you know, a world where wildlife thrives, more balanced, connected, and vibrant, world where people and wildlife live better together. And in a way, it's sort of also a definition of One Health. We want a balanced, connected, and vibrant world with healthy ecosystem where people and wildlife live healthy and together. So thank you so much. I will be here for probably the rest of the day. So if you want to have a chat, I will be happy to try to to talk with people.
Thank you very much, Javier.
Thanks.
Real illustration of how connected we are and our interdependence on each other. Can I once again open the floor to questions within the room or via Mentimeter and also on Zoom, likewise. You've stunned us all.
This is an easy QA.
I see anyone out there? Oh, I've got one. Thank you, sir.
Hello, thanks for a very good talk. Could I ask, do you think illegal rewilding of species represents any particular risks to human health?
It represents a lot of risks. I think like if you as as everything I have been showing in here, there is a right way and a wrong way of doing things. Reintroduction of species is you said illegal rewilding, right? Okay, yeah. Rewilding is I think very important. We have to be more connected with the natural environment, and we need kind of areas where wildlife will thrive. But if you don't do it without thinking about how to do it, then it's a problem. You will be reintroducing species that maybe don't belong there. You will kind of unbalance the natural ecosystem in there. Maybe you are introducing a predator species or something that will be grazing on important species in there that will kind of make other species disappear from the area. They may be bringing diseases that are not there, or that the animals that live there are not kind of resistant to. So it's a lot of issues regarding kind of illegal rewilding, and I think that's one of the things why I wanted to include the drugs team in here. I think they do a very important job, and kind of you have to plan, evaluate the situation, do an assessment, risk analysis, and all these kind of things before thinking on realizing, for example, beavers or lynx or any other species in the wild.
Thank you. Just checking. Do we have one right at the back? 1 second, sir. Oh, is that all right? Yeah. Thank you. At the far end, please. I can see a hand in the air.
I was wondering about sort of how you're addressing the challenges. I think especially since like zoonotic diseases came to the front, there's sort of a little bit of a like the PR problem with things like bats, especially being scapegoated, and sort of pushing for like One Health as being a solution, not a problem. It's like we don't eradicate the bats, we just need to give them their space. Like, how do you manage that sort of communication and like, given zoonotic diseases making the headlines a lot more recently?
I think that's key word that you said is one of the most important things in any work we do is communication. We have to be able to explain people what we are doing and why we are doing it, and for example, yeah, why we don't have to exterminate the bats, why they play an important role in the ecosystem. If we get rid of them, other issues will come up. So it's sometimes difficult, but it's not only bats. It has happened with Ebola and apes. For example, people wanted to get rid of apes because they were the carriers of Ebola and they kind of were transmitting it. It happened with many species. When we kind of talk about the COVID outbreaks and the wet markets and all that, kind of like people were trying to pinpoint to a specific kind of, is a pangolin or is a this one or is a monkey, and then the problem is not the animal. The problem is how we interact with wildlife. So yeah, sometimes I think the way that the internet or the newspapers or the news handle the issues is not the best, but it's also a role to kind of inform and contribute to how situations are explained in a way. I don't know if I answered your question, but
Need for more education.
more, yeah, communication like and education.
Yeah, rather than seeking the enemy in the animal. In order to involve our online audience in the room, I think we've got one question from online, and then Ray perhaps might ask you to do yours offline in the break. Would that be all right?
Yes, thank you. So this is from online. So what role does disease surveillance in wildlife play in preventing pandemics?
You knew you were going to get that one.
Yeah, big question.
Thank you for the question.
So that's also sort of a tricky question, because there are a lot of, or there has been a lot of projects, big projects looking in doing pathogen surveillance and many other things, but in many cases we don't really know where this will happen. Or okay, we can focus on wet markets, or we can focus on Southeast Asia and Congo Basin, but it may be that it comes out from somewhere else, and we are not surveilling that specific thing. So in a way, I think we have to also consider to kind of identify risk behaviors and how people interact with wildlife and what are the hotspots where people will be able kind of to get diseases from and all these kind of things rather than because I think pathogen surveillance is also important and interesting, but we need a more kind of comprehensive approach in a way to kind of not only look for pathogens or not only do kind of molecular biology and analysis in the lab of samples, but kind of work with the people and know how kind of what we need to change to avoid this transmission of new emerging pathogens.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Oh, I guess.
One final question, I think.
Okay, thank you. I was thinking about your reindeer and this very widespread around the world farming, if you like, of semi-wild populations. And when you're up there in northern Scandinavia, the Swarmy sort of do a lot of it for tourism, and then they go back to the electrically heated Volvos. Clearly, the indigenous farming is dying out, even though they now have skidoos, ways of doing it, modern ways of doing it that are more amenable to young folk, I suppose. But if that sort of farming of large wild populations were to stop, would those herds go back to, you know, more of a normal interaction with the environment as a wild population? I'm just interested because if we didn't want that to happen, we would want to support that type of stuff, the type of farming of wild animals. I know we've got the woodland reindeer, which is a wild species, whereas the other one isn't.
There is, I can talk about reindeer for a long time also because I have been working with them for 12 years. So in Scandinavia, you have two types of wild reindeer. One that is exactly the same species as the semi-domestic one, but lives in the kind of a wild area in the south, and the woodland or the forest reindeer. If we think about semi-domestic populations, I don't think the number of animals that are currently kind of handled as a semi-domestic population will be maintained as a wild population. It's way too many to be able to survive without human interaction. They need to be fed in some areas because there is not enough food. Is also a problem about sustainable use of resources. Climate change, they don't have access to food because the ground is kind of, there is rain instead of snow, and then the ice kind of get packed and they cannot kind of go through to get the food. So probably if kind of semi-domestic farming or however you want to call herding stops, many of those reindeer will die. Either they will have to be kind of euthanized and kind of harvested in slaughterhouses and all that, or if they just let them be, many of them will die. And it will also be a ecosystem problem because by the time they die, they will have kind of been grazing all over, eating all the food that is available, and many other species will also kind of suffer from this. I think there are some examples in some of the islands in the Antarctica where they brought reindeer many years ago. They let them there, and then at some point there were too many. They ate all the grass, and then they died. So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question or just kind of said whatever I wanted, but we can talk after.
Thank you, Javier. Well, further reindeer discussions during the break,
Yeah.
but I might stop us there, I think. But I would like to say a huge thank you for giving us a much clearer understanding of the One Health concept with some really super practical examples as well that we'll remember. So might we have a round of applause for Javier and
Thank you.
Louis?